G'day everyone, I'm standing on the wall of Lake Mokoan, or what used to be the wall that retained the water in Lake Mokoan, which is now the Winton Wetlands. And sad news, just like Lake Mokoan was decommissioned, the Winton Wetlands is going the same way. I'll explain more shortly. Now firstly, I'm not filming this video to put any bias on any arguments. I just want this video to be about facts. I want to tell a story. I want to tell you about Lake Mokoan. I want to tell you about the Winton Wetlands. And I just want to deliver some facts so that people know what is going on or what has happened over here. Basically, Lake Mokoan was built in the early 1970s, a little bit before I was built. It was built by damming up Winton Swamp. Winton Swamp was a natural wetland called an ephemeral wetland, which meant it had periods of being wet and being dry. So they thought, we'll dam it up, make it deeper and store water there. It was an offline storage for the Broken River. So what that means is that when Lake Nillicooti was full on the Broken River and they had extra water, they could then divert it through the inlet channel into Lake Mokoan and store it. But it was a bit of a disaster right from the start. There was issues with the wall, then there was issues with the water quality, but the biggest issue came through evaporation. So much water was lost here through evaporation when it was Lake Mokoan. And I'll go more into that shortly. But let's just have a look around here. Over there, you can see farmland. That's always been farmland. There's the wall that I'm standing on, the old Lake Mokoan wall. Now let's look into the Winton Wetlands. That is the Winton Wetlands. Miles and miles of very, very flat bushland. It used to be water when it was a lake. Now it's bushland. Now, years ago, that was Winton Swamp out there, and I'll show you that. I'm going to work my way up along here and give you a bit of an insight into a lot of things. But years ago, that was Winton Swamp. Winton Swamp filled every few years when we had a really wet year, and then it overflowed down the creek and into the Broken River system. Then it was dammed into Lake Mokoan. Now, this Lake Mokoan wall is 7.3, I think it is, kilometres long, or it could be 7.6. It's over 7 kilometres long, and you can tell I'm at its highest point, and it's not very high. That gives you an indication of just how shallow this lake was. Now the water you can see in front of me here, that's what we call the borrow pits. There's quite a number of these borrow pits. I do a lot of carp fishing in these borrow pits. I believe that is where a lot of the dirt was taken to make this wall. They dug huge big holes there to get dirt to build this wall here to hold the water back. And they're permanent water. There's only a couple of spots in the Winton Wetlands that are permanent water. The rest of it only has water when we get lots of rain. But the borrow pits are permanent water. I've seen them very low, but even in droughts, I've never seen them dry up. There's always been water in them. And there's a number of these borrow pits along here. Behind there, you can see heaps and heaps of dead trees. There were thousands of red gum trees drowned by the making of Lake Mokoan. And they're all still out there. But anyway, let's go for a walk off the wall down to the overflow. Now I'm back at the wall. I'm at the car park at the wall. This is the bottom end of the Winton Wetlands. You can see there it goes down. This is where the wall was cut. This is where the Lake Mokoan wall was cut out. They cut all that part out of the wall so that they could build the overflow called the breach. Actually, before I show you the breach, I want to show you this. I'm pretty sure that's all Goulburn Murray water stuff in there, but if you look here, Lake Mokoan diverters pipeline, 24 megalitres a day, 27.5 kilometres of pipeline, do not enter, blah, blah, blah. So basically, when Lake Mokoan was drained, a lot of people were complaining, oh, we can't pump water now, we've lost our water. That's not completely true. What actually happened, huge big pump was put in here, that's the pipe there. And that pumps water out of that channel, which is I call it the old Lake Mokoan outlet channel, all the way through the Winton Wetlands to the top end, so the people that used to pump the water out of the top end of Lake Mokoan still have water. There's like a big turkey nest dam up there, and they fill that with water from here, which comes with water from Broken River water. Now I think that's called Stockyard Creek. Basically, that's the old Lake Mokoan outlet channel. It's now the Winton Wetlands overflow. So back in the Lake Mokoan days, when the wall was full, this is where they let the water out. Now it just floods over the top. Now it just floods over the top here when we get a flood. So the other side of that fence, or this fence, I'm in Winton Wetlands, that becomes Goulburn Murray water, I believe, and flows down there all the way down where it runs into the Broken River at Casey's Weir. You've probably seen me filming a few videos in this area over the years. There's carp everywhere. Yes, got him! I have got one of them. I don't know how I'm going to land him, but I've got him. In the background I can see them jumping over there trying to get up into the rapids. I'll try and guide him through these. An unweighted bunch of worms at the base of the Winton Wetlands, and this big mud marlin has just broken my line. You've got to be joking. After all that, he has got off. Oh, time to tie on a new hook and try again. This here, that's a carp trap, because that water there is level with the Broken River. If the Broken River rises a foot, that rises a foot. So when we had a big flood, the Broken River flooded all the way at the top here. I think it was 2011, it flooded up over here and carp was seen trying to get up into here. I remember seeing it once when it was overflowing. There was about a 2-foot gap and the carp were trying to jump up, the big carp. So that's put there to stop big carp from making their way up into the wetlands during wet years. Now let's walk along the breach. That's the vehicle track. I was actually just talking to a guy up there then who has a key to get into the wetlands for research purposes. Now, this is a breach, or the overflow, whatever you want to call it. This part of the wetlands here where you can see that water, that's a bit like a sump. Basically, when the lake gets really low, that gets really low. Some of you may have seen a video that I filmed over here recently when I was fishing with my friend Sonny, and we caught heaps of carp. Nah, a little bit bigger than the last one. Probably about a 60, I'm going to guess.
Try to not losing your carp like you did with your dad. There you go.
I'd rather have a carp lost at the net. That's bigger than the last one. Well, we were just down there about 150 metres on the left hand side. That is thick with carp. The carp trap that I just showed you, it works very well. The problem is it stops the big carp from swimming up into the wetlands, but they still get in from other areas, and you only need a few, and the next thing you know, they grow, they spawn. During the last floods, there was small carp swimming across the tracks at the top ends of the wetlands. So the whole carp battle, while that trap works well, they get in elsewhere. They say that water brings life. Ain't that the truth? Everything is out tonight, and tomorrow there'll be all kinds of birds and stuff here on this water looking for a feed. Now, this is probably one of the most important things I'm going to point out in this video. As the wetlands fills, after heaps and heaps of rain, usually it fills about once every 5 years or so. The last time it filled, I think, was 2022. 2023, something like that. Anyhow, it filled, it overflowed for a long time. You can still see the black stain on the concrete there from the tannin stained water where it overflowed. It flowed over there for months. And then it got to the top of the breach because it stopped, inflow stopped, and it settled and it remained full. Now, over that following summer, It evaporated down to about probably 40 centimetres vertically below full. So about where the shadow of my elbow is where it sat for most of the winter. During the next winter, which I think was 2023, we had a lot of rain. We had heaps of rain. We had flooding. There was so much water flooding into the top end of the Winton Wetlands for months and months and months. And guess what? It never even replaced the evaporation from the summer before. Now that was a real eye-opener to me as to just how much water Lake Mokoan was losing through evaporation. All of that water that was flowing in for months, and at times the road was closed by floodwaters, didn't even overflow the wetlands. It looked like it wasn't going to overflow, and then we got a huge big summer storm just before Christmas, and it flowed over just for a week or two, and that was it. But anyway, it evaporated about 40 centimetres. It took a whole winter's worth of rain to not even bring it back to full. And that's only on what's out there now, Winton Swamp, or the natural swamp. Lake Mokoan surface area was a dozen times bigger than that. So it would have lost a lot more water than that little bit of an evaporation. That was a real eye-opener for me. Anyway, we've seen the breach, we've seen the pump, we've seen the Lake Mokoan wall and the burrow pits. Let's go for a drive further down into the swamp. Here we have one of the old Lake Mokoan pump sheds where the farmers used to pump water out of the lake. This was actually my favourite spot to fish back in the Lake Mokoan era. I could just drive up to the edge just here. Wander down there and just fish. The water was usually just down in here somewhere. But as you can see, even when... Let's come down here a bit. We were usually fishing down around here. The water level was usually down here. So even when the water was here, out there was not more than just a couple of metres deep. Now you may be able to see way out there in the middle, there's water. That's the original Winton Swamp. And you can still see a little bit of water out there now. Hopefully we'll get a better view of that soon. But this was my favourite spot to sit, drown some bait, and I'd catch carp and yellow belly from here. Pretty much exactly what I do at Lake Nillicooty now. Lake Nillicooty is upstream of here. Lake Nillicooty is on the Broken River. This was fed with Broken River water through an inlet channel and an outlet channel. Now, I don't know what they were thinking when they designed this lake, but the lake stretches for miles from way down there where we just were, all the way to way up there. And guess what? The inlet channel and the outlet channel are both down there. The water came in and went out, and this didn't really get much of a flush up through here. When I was a kid, this was a premier redfin fishing lake. We'd just go out to these trees out here, jag little jaggers and stuff under the boat, and we'd catch redfin all day, and some of them were huge. And sometimes if it wasn't rough, if it wasn't windy, we'd motor over there to the island, and we'd pull up on the island and have a barbecue, and we'd fish off the island for a while. I just want to say that I'm not taking sides with anybody. I'm not on the Winton Wetlands side. I'm not on the shooters and fishers side. I'm not on the government's side. I'm certainly not on their side at the moment. But this video is just to tell a story and state a few facts. Because what's happened, the government built this big lake. Then the government took the lake away in, I think it was 2009, and they replaced it with the Winton Wetlands. And now they're taking the Winton Wetlands away. The government has just decided now that they're not going to fund the Winton Wetlands anymore. And there's a lot of questions as to what's actually going to happen with all of this land. You see, at the moment, there's a coffee shop which has just shut its doors, just up the road here. There's scientists, there's field staff, there's a couple of rangers that maintain the tracks, clean the toilets, empty the bins in the campsites. They work out here full time. They're all going to go. There's cultural specialists out here organising Aboriginal events and stuff, and they've all pretty much been given their marching orders. So I'm not sure what the future holds for this place. I've got my own ideas, my own assumptions. I assume it's just going to become a huge, big wildlife reserve. You know, just like, Winton Wetlands Natural Features Reserve or something. I don't know. That's my assumption. Anyway, let's keep moving. This is the old Lake Mokoan car park at the boat ramp. There's still a few remnants from the old Lake Mokoan days. There's still old picnic tables down there from back when it was Lake Mokoan. And if I pan around over here, you might not be able to see in the light, but the original toilet block is over there. It's been redone and maintained. And in there's still some old concrete picnic tables from back in the Lake Mokoan era. This car park used to be filled with boats when the fish were biting. And here's the old double boat ramp. I remember seeing a massive big blue here one day between a couple of blokes. And my dad and I had been out on the lake fishing for yellowbelly, and we came back, and we could hear this yelling and screaming. There was someone on a boat out there, and he climbed out of his boat because it was only about 3 foot deep. And his son at the front of the boat started throwing empty stubbies at his dad's head. And then they get back to the boat ramp and they're yelling and screaming and getting physical with each other. It was just ridiculous. And then some big tall fella just yells out, "Is this going to take long? I want to launch me boat." Oh, there's a memory and a half. In the 1980s, this was an amazing redfin fishery. Then late 80s, early 90s, they started stocking it with yellowbelly. And it was a great yellowbelly and Murray cod fishery as well. Something you've got to remember with these places, whether it's the Winton Wetlands or Lake Mokoan, they're sort of, what's the word? They're byproducts of a resource. Like, the lake wasn't built to create a fishery, if that makes sense. Unfortunately, we'd like to think it was built solely so that we could fill it with fish and enjoy it, but it was built as part of water management. But the boat ramp, I think, ended about here. I think it was down here, the original ramp. I think that bit down there was the add-on after they drained Lake Mokoan, so that when the lake's full, you can launch, when the Winton Wetlands is full, you can launch a kayak here. When the Winton Wetlands is full, the water is sort of halfway up the boat ramp here, and you can paddle around all these trees, you can paddle right along there. You used to be able to paddle out through all those reeds out to the water, but I think it's just gotten too overgrown now, which is a bit of a shame. I'd like to see a clear passage through there for people to get out and access the main body of water. But we used to catch a lot of fish just around these trees in the shallows. Well, the whole lake was shallows. Just looking across the boat ramp here, and as you can see, there's a lot of walking tracks out here that have been created by the Winton Wetlands. There's quite a few signs, although some of this signage is getting a little bit old now. Just sort of showing photos of it when it's full and when it's dry, and talking about a lot of science stuff. And some stuff here about Lake Mokoan. About the arguments when it was decommissioned, and there's a lot of information there about Lake Mokoan. And as you can see, the walking track goes along there. When the lake was decommissioned, the Winton Wetlands Committee of Management was established to try and create ecotourism over here, and also to preserve natural features. There's actually quite a few endangered species out here, which is something that's concerning a few of us with regards to the Winton Wetlands now being defunded. There's frogs, I think, that are endangered. There's certainly endangered fish. There's purple spotted gudgeon out here. There's a few concerns around what's going to happen with all those things now. But anyway, the Winton Wetlands Committee of Management, they were funded to do this sort of stuff, to put bike tracks in, to reopen the roads. We'll go for a drive through the lake in a minute, and you'll be able to see where they've built roads and stuff out there. This is one of my favourite parts of the Winton Wetlands. Where I am, it would have been underwater back in the Lake Mokoan era. Well, only when the lake had a fair bit of water in it, which actually wasn't often. But over there, you don't know whether you can see it, there's a building that used to be the old yacht club years ago when it was Lake Mokoan. That's now an education hub. That's where schools bring school groups of kids and stuff out here to learn all about ecology and outdoor stuff. It's also a cultural area. It's where they have a lot of indigenous sort of things happening, events and stuff there. They're all this stuff's going to be gone now. But the biggest killer to the local community now is through that gap over there is a building called The Hub. The Hub is a cafe, and it is a beautiful building, and it's very popular. In fact, the reason I'm sharing this from over here was because there was probably about a dozen cars in the Hub. There's quite a lot of people over there, and they all looked a little bit bewildered because the Hub's already been shut. It's shut down. I don't know what's going to happen to any of these assets, whether they get sold privately or whether someone decides to start a cafe there. I've got no idea. I don't know. They might sit there and just become derelict buildings forever. I've got no idea. I've got a lot of unanswered questions myself. But over there, in front of the Hub, there's a kids' playground complete with a flying fox. When I was a disability support worker, that was one of my favourite places to bring our clients, or participants as we call them these days, because I could sit in there, have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and a cake, and the kangaroos would just come up and jump up on the grass right outside the window where they were sitting, and they just loved it. Hopefully all this other stuff stays open. I can't see why it won't. This is an observation pad. Very popular with people who like taking star photos because there's no power lines. It's just free, clear view of the sky. Benalla is just over there. You might be able to make out a bit of white smoke on the horizon from DNR Henderson. Well, Benalla is the other side of that. And Wangaratta is over that way where I live. Myrtleford's way over there in the mountains. So there's not a lot of light pollution in the sky here. So it's a very popular spot with astrophotographers. They've got to put all these things up the top here to stop the birds from landing on top and shitting all over the signs. Actually, there's a few birds on here now. Nankeen kestrel, wedge-tail eagle. When I was driving in there was actually a black-shouldered kite just hovering up here. They're the big white birds. They sort of flap in one spot and look down and look for mice and stuff. There hasn't been many around lately. I was happy to see that. I was going to get my big camera out when I finish filming this scene and get a photo of it, but it's gone. But anyway, this is the observation pad. And look, as far as I'm aware, this will all still remain open. It's just all the cafes and coffee shops and everything over there that will close now that the funding's been drawn. It's time for lift-off. Let's go for a fly and have a bit of a look around. Right, now there's the Lunette just moving off to the left-hand side of the screen. My drone was 1 kilometre from where I was. I'd actually gone 1,100 metres and I still didn't get over to the Lunette. But anyway, that is an enormous, vast expanse of water, but it's very shallow. You can see a couple of white things in the bottom of the screen there. They're probably dead carp. There's actually a lot of dead carp out there on the edge of the water, as you'll see later in the video, because the water is just so shallow. It looks like a huge big lake full of water, but I reckon at its deepest there's probably only a few inches of water out there, and I'm expecting this to completely dry up probably this springtime. If you look closely, you'll see a few white dots on the water here. They're dead carp. You'll see more soon because I'll get closer, but they're dead carp laying in the shallow water. You can just sort of see them disappearing off the bottom of the screen there now, but as I get closer to this sort of dark layer here, you'll see them all. See those white things there? They're all dead carp. There's a few birds buzzing around there as well. What that tells me is that the water isn't very deep, because if there was deep water out in the middle, those carp would go out there looking for it rather than dying. These are just a couple of photos here, still shots. Now we're lifting back up. But this is only one small part of a much larger waterway. Look at those birds hovering over those dead carp. They're whistling kites. Whistling kites are fish-eating raptors. They will be loving themselves sick out there at the moment with all of those dead carp. Right, that gate there, that's the gate into the Winton Wetlands. This is the Boggy Bridge entrance. There's 3 main ways into the Winton Wetlands, and I'm coming in through the Boggy Bridge entrance. There's a big information board all about the Lake Mokoan and the Winton Wetlands. A few more information boards, a few signs up. And as we walk down here, this was a road before the before Lake Mokoan was built. This was called Boggy Bridge Road. And then Lake Mokoan was built. That big wall that I started this video on top of was made. All this was flooded and this road went underwater. And then when the lake was decommissioned, part of the one of the tasks that the Winton Wetlands Committee of Management had to do was reopen these old tracks, come in here, put new dirt down, grade them, and just pretty much rebuild the tracks where the original tracks used to be. This crazy looking thing here, the cows are obviously fake because they're very colourful cows, but that old barge was used by farmers that used to farm on an island way out there called Green's Island. Well, it's now called Green's Hill. It used to be Green's Island when it had water around it, but it's now called Green's Hill, and they used to have cattle on it, and the only way they could get cattle to and from Green's Hill was on that barge. They put a few of them on the barge, motor across, put them on the island to feed, then bring them back when they wanted to sell them or whatever they done. So this is the Boggy Bridge entrance. Right, now we're at Boggy Bridge. There's a bit of an information board there. This is the 11 Mile Creek. 11 Mile Creek is the creek that Ned Kelly grew up on, or used to live on when the whole Kelly stuff sort of broke out. But it's bizarre because that little puddle, that was bone dry a few weeks ago, and it's now got water in it from a bit of rainwater, and it's really clear, and the swallows are swooping down over it. There must be some kind of bugs or something there. But anyway, this is Boggy, this is 11 Mile Creek, and it flows under the bridge here, and then down into the main Winton Wetlands. When the Winton Wetlands are full, when it starts flowing over that breach that I showed you earlier, this is the top, this is the end, this is the top of it here. This is like pool water. From here, excuse me, from here down. In fact, when it's full, you can often see big expanses of open water down there, and we get lots of bird photos and stuff there, and you can see just heaps of water along there, and it's a great spot to get sunset photos. Now, if my voice is a bit croaky, I apologise. I've picked up some kind of a bug. Now, a couple of years ago, this flooded so much. This is the main creek. 11 Mile Creek is the main creek that feeds the Winton Wetlands. This flooded so much that the pipe under here was full. It was like a raging creek, but there was water flowing over the road there. You can see they had to cut dips in the road there and down there and down there, just to allow water to flow over because there was so much water, and it flowed like that for weeks. Here I am back at the Winton Wetlands, and wet it is. It's just fantastic. If I look over there, you can see a few swans. I can see 4 swans over there. That's just great. The water has returned. The wetlands are not full. This is Boggy Bridge. I've never seen this much water flowing over here. Normally that's got a bit of a flow, but at the moment it's got that much of a flow that the drain can't handle the amount of water, and as a result it's backed up in there and is flowing over the road in 3 or 4 different places into the lower half of the wetlands. Boggy Bridge itself used to be just there. You can still see an old, like a bridge pillar down there. What happened after the lake dried up during the decommissioning process, or a bit after, there was bushfire. A big fire went through here. You can still see a lot of the trees here, even this one here, have got black on them where bushfire has burnt them out, and the bushfire came through and it burnt out the bridge. So the bridge survived underwater for years under Lake Mokoan. Lake Mokoan dried out, a bushfire came through and then burnt the bridge away. But you can still see quite a few burnt trees in this section of the wetlands. It was a big fire. I could see the smoke from Wangaratta. I came over here to see what was going on. It was a huge fire, but it didn't burn out much of the wetlands as in a percentage, just this area up here. I'm standing in the car park at the Greens Hill Campground. That's all. This is all Greens Hill. Back when Lake Mokoan was here, there was water all around me. This was a huge big island called Greens Island, and this is where the cattle used to live that I spoke about earlier. Now, there's a covered area up there on the hill, which I'll show you shortly. We've got this big car park. There's numbered campgrounds, campsites right along there. Now all this here has been built with government funding. The funding that's just been pulled now, so I'm not sure how or if it's going to be maintained anymore. We've got toilets, some environmental fancy loos. Over here we've got an undercover area, a little picnic area. At the moment you can camp here. There's a booking system and you've got to pay through the Winton Wetlands website. I don't know what's going to happen with that, whether it'll be a paid system or a free system or whether it'll be closed. I've just got so many questions. But there's a nice picnic area there. Over here there's a community campfire. Someone's even put a little bit of firewood here. Wow, look at that. It wouldn't be complete without a whole heap of burnt glass. Locals are worried that now that this is being defunded, that might get overrun with bogans, but they've already been here. They already come here sometimes. And so you can see all this is Green's Island. This is where all the cows were. If I was to stand here 20 years ago, it was pretty low then, maybe 30 years ago when it was full, there was water all the way around the entire island. Over through here, I'll go for a walk over here. You can see there's a walking track around here. You can walk out there to the end of that island. It's like a lunette. When the wetlands are full, that's a really nice place over there. The sound of frogs and cockatoos is deafening. It's a beautiful area, but that's all the lake out there. These are all the campsites that you can see. That's what the numbers are, so that when you book, you know where you can camp. Number 10, in that drum. That's a remnant from before Lake Mokoan, that is. I'm not sure what it is, but that would have been there before the lake was built. When the Winton Wetlands are full, there's a beautiful spot here to get sunset photos. The sun reflects off all the water out onto the trees, and it's just wonderful. And you can see the walking track going up there, but there's also a driving track, and that's the one I'm going on. And this is a little bit of a picnic area, undercover picnic ground. I've actually filmed a few videos in this spot, and you can see in here there's some information boards, and because of its undercover nature, I've filmed here in the rain when it's been raining, and I wanted to film a product review or a tutorial of some kind, so I filmed it in here undercover. When I had really bad sciatica, I filmed a video about my hat, my solar powered hat. I filmed that here because I needed to keep sitting down and getting up because I couldn't stand on my feet for too long. I filmed that here as well. It is a little bit prone to wind here though, so on a windy day it's never a good spot to film. It's certainly one of the little spots that I like to come to. If you look over here, you can see some photos of back when it was Winton Swamp, before the lake was even built. Here we go. The flooding of the Winton Mokoan Swamp in 1971 to create Lake Mokoan saw the new reservoir inundate around 7,000 hectares of agricultural land, ancient forests and unique wetlands, 200,000 dead river red gums. Wow, imagine doing that these days. Right, so let's put it into perspective. We started there. That's the outlet channel. We walked along the wall. We got some photos of these borrow pits. I showed you that channel there where all the carp are. We then came around here to the old pump where I used to fish, and the boat ramp, and the observation deck and the hub. That's all in that area. That's where the little bit of water still remains that we could see in there, and it's very, very shallow. When the Winton Wetlands are full, these swamps all have water in them, some more than others. Ashmeads Swamp here is a favourite of mine because it's a great spot to get sunset photos. When Lake Mokoan was full, that whole area was underwater, the whole lot. Now we're here at Greens Hill, so we started here. We've been around here, stopped there, stopped here on Boggy Bridge Road. We went down here and had a look at the Greens Hill Campground. Now we're up at the Greens Hill Lookout. We'll now go back down here, and then I reckon I'll go down this end and show you this part. Then I'll show you Ashmeads, and then we'll head out that way on Humphries Lane. So I said earlier that there's 3 entrances into the Winton Wetlands. There's Boggy Bridge Road, which is the way we came in. There's the Ashmeads Swamp Road, which takes you out to the Hume Freeway or back out to Glenrowan, or up this way here, which we call Humphries Lane. There is now kind of another way right down the end here, Winton North Road. It used to be locked. It's now reopened, but that's very, very muddy and slippery. Definitely can't get through there in a 2-wheel drive, and I wouldn't even go through there in a 4-wheel drive at the moment after the rain, so we're not going to count that one. All the tracks, the main 3 entrances, the tracks, they're all 2-wheel drive friendly, even in wet times. I'm standing at the corner of Boggy Bridge Road and Winton North Road. We are going to go out that way, but first we're going to go that way and have a look down that end of the reserve. But first, something I want to show you here. This is probably the most popularly, if that's a word, photographed part of the Winton Wetlands, and that's this rainwater tank. There's all these natural features and wildlife and stuff to photograph, and yet people want to photograph this rainwater tank. It's been photographed against star trails and stars. It's been lit up with different coloured lights to make it look really cool. But this rainwater tank actually serves a purpose, and I'll tell you what that is. Look at that, you can even see right up into his eyes. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that where I was standing at the breach or the overflow, I showed you the pipes and the pumps, and I said that they pumped water all the way from one end all the way up to the other. So where I am now in the middle, that pump is miles down that end, and they pump the water all the way through to the pump or the big turkey nest dam up that end for irrigation. But then they've put a pipe off that pipe over to this southern side of the reserve for firefighting purposes, so that if there's a fire, they can access water for firefighting. They can hook up to the taps there and access water for firefighting. That's why that's there. That's there solely for firefighting purposes. As you can see, it doesn't catch any water. There's no roof, there's no runoff. The water is fed through those pipes and into here for firefighting purposes. Right now, while I'm filming, I can see a flame robin sitting on a bit of grass out there, standing out like dog's balls. When I shared the initial post on Facebook about the bad news of this place being defunded, a few people suggested that it'll probably get taken over now with solar panels. I hope that is wrong. I would absolutely hate that. Thankfully, much of this area, you couldn't. There's just too much timber to cut down, and it's too waterlogged. But there are areas at the top end of the lake here, that certainly could be used, and I just hope that they don't. I think that'd be a real shame to put such an eyesore in such a nice place. Right, I'm still on Winton North Road, pretty much in the middle of it. This road goes for miles way down there, and if I pan around, it goes for miles way down there as well. It's hard to believe that this was all underwater. You can see it dips down there, so over there might have been a bit deeper, but here, much of the time, it was probably barely a foot under the water. But what's significant about this particular spot, before Lake Mokoan was built, there was a little township here called Winton North. There was a church, there was a shop, I think, there was a post office, and over this side of the road, if we come over here, there's an information board, but there was a school. The Winton North Primary School was here. So if we have a look at here, we can see some old black and white photos of the Winton North Primary School, around about 1929. Winton North School circa 1929 or 1930. Wow, it's hard to believe. 1929, those kids are probably 10 or 11 years old. They probably went on to be World War II veterans. But this is the old Winton North Primary School. Before the lake was built, there was an entire primary school here years ago. This is the other main campground at the Winton Wetlands. I showed you the Greens Hill campground earlier. I'll show you this one now. This is the Bill Friday campground, because that's Bill Friday Swamp over there in the background. It's dry at the moment, but I'll show you this campground. It's not as popular as the other one. This campground doesn't have the same amenities as the other one. It's got a toilet block and a picnic table, and that's about it. The other one's certainly the more popular campsite. There's another one. There's 2 dead kangaroos in the middle of the campground. Who's going to remove them now that there's no rangers out here, I wonder? Because there's permanent staff out here that would come and remove them and keep the campground clean, but they're not going to be here anymore. There's a colourful table. I filmed an EcoFlow product review there in the sun last year, some solar panels. Down here we have another toilet block. Who's going to bring the water into the pump, to the tanks for these toilets? Now, just down the track from the Bill Friday campground is this Bill Friday rest area, similar to the one on Greens Hill. It's got a couple of tables there, a few information boards. I've filmed quite a lot of videos in this little covered area. It's usually out of the wind. It's out of the rain. It's just a good spot to come and film product reviews and tutorials and stuff on a bad day, on a rainy day. When the Winton Wetlands have got a lot of water in them, like after heaps of rain, this swamp fills up, and it's called Bill Friday Swamp. At the moment, it's still called Bill Friday Swamp, it just hasn't got any water in it. Right, so I'm still on Winton North Road here, but I'm at the end of the wetlands. Over the right here, you'll see there's just green grass. You right up there, cockatoo. Noisy things. That used to be, when Lake Mokoan was full, there was water over the other side of that paddock there, just on the other side of those trees. And over this side, this was also all water. You can see all the dead trees in there. So that was Bill Friday Swamp before Lake Mokoan was built. And then when Lake Mokoan was built, it was just a bay in the back of Lake Mokoan. And the water was over the other side of those trees there. It's all the same. That's the main part of the Winton Wetlands. And this big, long, narrow strip of farmland here, we used to call that the peninsula, because it was. When the lake was full, it was just a big, long peninsula that went out into the middle of Lake Mokoan. I'm going to drive out to the end of that now, or as far as I can drive, and that's one of my favourite spots in the entire Winton Wetlands. And from there, you can look over the water and you can just get some wonderful sunset photos. To get out to the Lunette, you've got to drive through farmland. This is all leased. It's actually leased off the Winton Wetlands, I believe. And as with any farm gate, you always leave the gate the way you find it. So I'll open it, drive through, then get out and close it. Right, I've driven out to the end of the Lunette. That whole track is actually quite new. We used to just have to drive through the through the farmland, and it was always really slippery and boggy and no good in wet times. But now we've had a fair bit of rain lately, and it's perfectly fine thanks to this new road. The new road that was built with funding that no longer exists. Now from here, you can see out there maybe the main vast expanse of water in the main swamp. I wonder how many dead carp there are out there. There were certainly quite a few. I could see quite a few when I was flying my drone earlier. It's always windy here, probably because it's got all that fetch out there, nothing to sort of block it. But anyway, this is one of my favourite parts of the wetlands. this little pedestrian gate here. You walk through here and you can walk out there to the island. Back in the Lake Mokoan days, we used to call it the island. Then it was called the Spit, and now I think some people still call it the Spit, and some people call it the Lunette. But it's the walking. It's one of my favourite walks. It goes out there to that island. There's a bit of a cliff on the island, and when you stand on top of it, you just look out right across all that water, and the bird life is just amazing. It's just a wonderful place to go and visit. One of my favourites. This is one of my favourite spots for other reasons, because out here is one of my favourite herping places. Herpetology is the study of reptiles, pretty much. It's one of my favourite places to go and look for reptiles. So even though it's the middle of winter, I can't help myself. I'm going to go and see if I can find a snake. And if I do, I'll film it and photograph it with my phone. It has better zoom than what this one does. I found one. Actually, I may have even found two. Might even be more than two. There's a lot of black scales there. Look, they're all moving at once. They can see me coming. How many are there? Might be three. There goes one head. There goes another head. There goes the third head. That's three. I'll zoom out a bit. Well, three have gone down that one hole, and there's still more there. So there's either 4 or 5 in that one spot. They found a nice sunny spot out of the wind. I'd like to leave them alone, but I'm a little bit curious. I want to know how many are there. Well, there's 3. Oh yeah, he's moving anyway. And number 4's gone down that hole. No, he's gone down the same hole. There's 4 snakes have gone down that one hole. One of them's stuck halfway. He's reversing out. Isn't there enough room in there for you, mate? He's pulling his head out. Here he comes, look. He's coming back out. Going back the other way. How cool is that? Can't really see very well because he's in the shade. You can't sort of get a good idea, but 4 snakes in the one hole. And now he's going back down. There he goes. Must be a big hole because it has disappeared. Winter sunbakers. They love the winter sun, but they're never far from their hole, and they don't like it if it's windy, and I reckon that's why they were in under there, because they could get the sun, but not the wind. Here's a couple more. Red-bellied black snakes. Snakes don't hibernate, they brumate. What that means is they pretty much just stay inside for winter, but they'll come out and sit in the sun. Although these ones aren't in the sun, that's the weird bit. They're communal brumators, so often where there's one, there'll be more. They're big snakes, that one is anyway. One down the hole. This one will probably go straight down the same hole, I reckon. They're very slow this time of the year. He's got his head flattened out and he's found safety. He's out of there. So how many was there? 4 or 5 in that other hole? I can't even remember. I've seen that many I've lost count. Oh, snakes galore. You're not going to believe this. There's a snake right there. You can see him right in the middle of the frame there now. I had just watched 2 big snakes go in a hole right there that you can't even see. I saw that snake right there straight away. So I hit record and then something took off from under my feet and went down a hole in there that you can't see. And that frightened the absolute crap out of me because I've just walked from over there. Must have just about stood on that one. Let's go and say good day to this guy. He's in the sun. What could be better for a snake than to sort of flatten itself out a bit to absorb as much warmth as possible and then lay in the winter sun? Look at that. We leave him alone. Unlike the others, he's not going to go down a hole, so just having a look around. Just said there's another one nearby. Oh, see you later, mate. Snakes have a cycle. In the summer, they're hunting. They're out there in the reeds, in the rushes, near the water, looking for frogs because they like to eat frogs. Black snakes I'm talking about. In the autumn, they move back to their winter spot. In the winter, they lay low. They brumate, which means that they go into their holes and they stay there. When the sun comes out, they'll come out and sit in the sun, like all of us. But as soon as the sun goes behind the clouds or the temperature drops a bit, they're straight back underground. And they'll do that all winter. In the springtime, they'll start moving around again. And that's when we start seeing heaps of snakes. And they're looking for a mate. Then they'll mate. And then the cycle continues. So there's a lot of snakes to be found in winter, but only if you know where you're looking, and they're normally not far from their hole. They don't pose any threat. These snakes just go out there to feed, come up to the high ground to brumate. Go out there to feed, come up to the high ground to brumate. The cycle continues. Black snakes are pretty harmless at the best of times. Anyway, let's continue this journey out. We'll go down and have a quick look at Ashmeads, and then we'll head out via Humphrey Lane. This is the Ashmeads car park, the car park at Ashmeads Swamp, which is just over here. Now, Ashmeads Lane goes up there. I'm not going to go up there today, but it goes up there to that bend, about 150 metres up, turns right, then it leaves the reserve over there. So that's one of the entrance points. Back in the Lake Mokoan era, this was one of my favourite spots to fish in Lake Mokoan because you could drive into where the gate is over there now, and you could just walk in and fish off the bank. And it was one of the only spots where you could fish Lake Mokoan from this side of the lake and watch the sunset because most of the access was over the other side. But anyway, we've got a couple of people there. Water Gallery project. This is where they filmed that pathetic movie about Ned Kelly, the one with Charlie Hunnam and Russell Crowe. I forget what it was called. I watched it and couldn't even get halfway through it. They were all cross-dressing and it was just ridiculous. It was too stupid for words. But they basically built the Kelly homestead out there in the middle of Ashmeads Swamp when it was dry like now. And this was the track that they used to go in there. So this is Ashmeads Swamp. This is one of the wetter swamps. When the lake fills, this is just a sheet of water and this is just a spectacular spot for taking sunset photos. It's a wonderful spot to be. I've kayaked across here when it's been full of water. Now, I don't know whether you can see, it might be silhouetted, but there's a whole heap of trees here that have been painted to about 2 feet off the from the bottom, and that is so that when the lake's full, the paint reflects off the water, and it's called a water gallery. Now, I love the Winton Wetlands. I loved the Lake Mokoan before it. But there certainly are things that have been done out here that I don't agree with. I think it's just ridiculous. But if it's good for some people, good and well, it's not all about me. But it just seems a bit crazy. You can see a blue tree there. There's a black and yellow tree out here. On a wet year, right now, I would be standing in probably 60 centimetres of water. So that's the water gallery. I can hear a lot of corellas over there in the distance. Lots of little birds around here, which is really cool. But yeah, you can see where the water normally is when Ashmeads Swamp is full. It'll fill again. What happens, all these long grasses and reeds and stuff that have grown now, they grow in the dry times like now. Then when it fills, they break down and the swans come and break them all down and collect them all, and they build swan nests. And when this is full of water, it becomes a sheet of water with all these little volcanoes on it where the swans have all built nests out of all these grasses. It's part of a natural cycle. It's pretty cool. Now, what do we got here? Oh my God, there's eggs in it. Wow, look at the eggs. Wow! A swan's nest. How cool is that? I'm going to get a really quick photo. I'm going to move on because those eggs probably need their mother to sit on them and keep them warm. I'm excited. Here comes another swan's nest. Wow. Oh, look at the beautiful big swan over there. Big black swan flying. Yeah, that swan, I'm pretty sure, will be keeping a very close eye on this nest. I'm not even going to stop, I'm just going to drift straight past it. I don't like to disturb nature like this if I can avoid it. Wow, look at that. 2, 3, 4, 5 eggs. Wow. 2 swan nests. Absolutely amazing. Here comes another swan nest by the look of it. They're camouflaged very well, these swan nests. They just blend in. They look like that's just another log or stump in the swamp. Yep, what have we got in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cackleberries. 6 eggs. I'll keep on going and leave them alone. Oh, there goes a big swan, look. Well, this is the car park for Humphries Hill. There was an information board under this little roof here, but it's gone. I'm not sure what's happened there. But yeah, I'm in the car park. Humphries Hill was also an island, just like Greens Hill, back when Lake Mokoan was here. Before Lake Mokoan, there was a house up there on top of Humphries Hill, and there was one on Greens Hill as well many years ago. But there's not a lot here. There's a walking track through here that goes down to a tree that's had all the bark removed by Aboriginal people years ago to make a little boat, and the walking track goes around through there and up over the hill there to where the old house used to be. And one thing that I haven't mentioned today is the bike tracks. Pedestrians and bikes. There's literally tens of kilometres of sealed bike tracks through here. This goes right the length of Winton North Road. It crosses it down near the rainwater tank, then crosses it again and goes right down past Bill Friday Swamp. In fact, it goes right through the other end of the reserve. I'm pretty sure it goes all the way through to Benalla. There's a lot of bike riding tracks. That's a lot of infrastructure. You know, there's been changes. The Winton Wetlands have been defunded. So it's still going to fall under someone's umbrella and somebody will have to maintain it. I don't know what changes are going to happen to us regular users of the place. But there's too much stuff here just to let it all go. It's hard to imagine that we won't still be able to use it. Lots of unanswered questions about this place at the moment. As you drive into the Winton Wetlands on Humphrey Lane, this is one of the first swamps you get to. This is what they call the 11-mile wetland. That there is 11 Mile Creek. That's the same creek that flows under the road back at Boggy Bridge. I don't know whether you can see it or not, but there's a wallaby looking at me just standing over there now. This was dry up until that rain recently. It's had water in it for a few years and it finally dried out just recently. But basically, the 11 Mile Creek takes a lot of rain to get it to run. It's a seasonal creek. It's not a permanently flowing stream. It flows down to here. It then goes down. It goes down into this little hole, this drain, which is full of leaves, full of branches, and then flows through a pipe under the road, and then flows down there. That's 11 Mile Creek. From there, it flows through the wetlands, and water floods out of it, and it starts filling all the wetlands up at the top end of the reserve. Now, you can see here that the road's got a dip in it. That is so that when we get enough rain and that drain can't handle all the water, it flows over the road. That's like an overflow. And I've seen that flowing so hard that I wouldn't even drive through it in a four-wheel drive. It was really intense. The water, it's a fascinating place. The water will flow over there for weeks and you won't even see any of it end up into the into the main swamp. There's no way I'm driving through that. I've got years of four-wheel driving experience, and even though I know it's probably not enough current to wash the car away, it's the damage underneath the road is more of a danger. Look at all the water out here. Wow. Now it's flowing over the tracks here, but it's absolutely chock-a-block to the point that it's spilled out over the road and draining under here. Righto. This water's clearer. I can actually see the road with my Polaroid sunglasses on. Through about a foot of water. Now I'm on Humphries Lane here, and the gate out is down there about 300 metres, but I'm not going to wind this up. There's one other part of the wetland that I want to show you. It's sort of detached from the main part, and I'll go and show you that now, and that's an area known as the duck pond. This is the duck pond. It's a lake within a lake. Right now I'm walking along the wall, a bit like I did at the start of the video when I was on the old Lake Mokoan wall. Well, this is the duck pond wall. And there's the duck pond, and it's got water in it. It's not full, but it's certainly not dry either. On that side is Lake Mokoan, or it's the Winton Wetlands now, and you can see how flat, there's such a vast area of flat ground out there. When Lake Mokoan was full, that was all super shallow. It was a great spot for duck hunting. But they had a bit of foresight when they built Lake Mokoan, and they knew that all of this would dry up. They knew that this would experience periods of being dry because it was so vast and so shallow. So they created this part up here to put a bit of a weir at the top of the lake to create a refuge for the birds when Lake Mokoan dried up. That's the story, I believe, anyway. So now we have the duck pond. This wall here at the duck pond is a bit of a snake hotspot as well. Just like that other spot I was at earlier. If you're out here taking photos, just watch where you put your feet, but to be honest, most people probably wouldn't even know they're here. You can see just by looking that the grass actually gets slashed. You can see the long grass has been slashed either side there. That's what the staff out here do, the staff that aren't going to be here anymore. That's just one of their tasks. But quite often, you'll just see snakes in the winter around these rocks here. And that's because the rocks are nice and warm, they've got close access to the water, they've got sun, they've got everything they need to survive the winter. I've walked most of the way along the wall here at the duck pond. One of the things that worries me most about the duck pond, or about the defunding of the Winton Wetlands in general, is that here in the duck pond there is a population of critically endangered fish called the purple spotted gudgeon. They're a small-bodied native fish that was stocked in here a couple of years ago as part of their recovery. Some people call them the zombie fish because they came back from the dead. They were thought to be extinct from Victoria, and then there were a few found in a swamp down near Swan Hill. They were taken away and bred in captivity, and the offspring were released in here to ensure their survival. Now the scientists over here were monitoring them. They were doing surveys every now and again with nets to pick them up and see how they were going. And they can also, to a degree, regulate how much water flows in and out of this duck pond. We need rain. Without the rain, it doesn't get any water. But they don't want it to stay full. If we get too much rain, they can block off the flow so that this can drain down a little bit, which is quite important to the survival of these fish because we need the grasses and the weeds to grow in the dry outskirts of the lake. And then we need them to flood to provide habitat and food for the fish. So without the rangers over here, or the staff and the scientists over here, it's a bit of a concern as to what's going to happen with these zombie fish, these purple spotted gudgeon. That's one concern that I do have. Well, that's the duck pond. Now I'll show you something if I pan around. I don't know whether you can see that big long straight line there. That's a wall. That's actually the turkey nest dam that I was talking about earlier in the video. So I'm right at the far end of what used to be Lake Mokoan. The wall is way down the other end, miles down there. That's where the pump is, and that pumps water all the way up here into this turkey nest dam just here, so that the irrigators on the base of the Warby Ranges over here can still pump water out of the lake. So they've still got access to irrigation water. But that's the dam that I was talking about. You can't quite see it from here. You can't access it from here. Well, you probably could. You'd have to go down, cross that electric fence, and then walk through there, but I think you're probably not supposed to. Let's take a trip down memory lane through some photos and videos from Lake Mokoan and then from the Winton Wetlands. Some of these Lake Mokoan photos may be quite low resolution, so they could look a bit ordinary. Let's see how we go. The water was really dirty in Lake Mokoan. There's my eldest daughter fishing with me at the edge of Lake Mokoan. That's me and my grandfather on Lake Mokoan in the 1980s. That was a hiking trip down to the inlet channel not long before they drained it. I caught all those carp. Sunset at Ashmeads. More of Ashmeads. Fishing Lake Mokoan in front of the old pump that I showed you earlier. Now we're back for a beautiful sunset at Ashmeads. Ashmeads again. There's my very young wife taking photos at Ashmeads. Sunset at Ashmeads. Sunset at Ashmeads. Fishing down in front of the pump station down near the main road. Sunset from the pump station. After dark fishing or after sunset fishing near the pump station. There's my eldest daughter again from a distance, fishing with us about 2007. Late in the afternoon from the pump station. Back over at Ashmeads. That's at Ashmeads. It's a bit blurry, that one. My beautiful old dog Cassie used to come over to Lake Mokoan fishing with us. There's Loretta and Cassie fishing at Lake Mokoan. Just the trees in Lake Mokoan. There's my old Mitsubishi Triton parked on the bank of Lake Mokoan with the hubbies now. Reflections at Lake Mokoan. Loretta fishing down near the boat ramp. An afternoon thunderstorm at the back of Lake Mokoan over the mountains. We saw some fantastic sight, even some brolgers. I hope you enjoy this video. This is the place to be at the moment, the Winton Wetlands. Look at that pair of brolgers in the Winton Wetlands. Just walking through the water. Water everywhere. Here we go. Yep, got him. Oh, the little one. He's smaller than the rest anyway. Righto. This is why I like to use the anti-reverse. Oh no, he's not smaller than the rest actually, he's quite large. He's smaller than the last one. He's a similar size to the first one that I lost. Righto mate, I've hooked 3 and lost 2. Can I land 1 at least? Oh, having a few technical difficulties here. I've got him. Oh, I've got him. Finally. After losing 2 carp, I have finally landed 1 on the wild bait stick. A big carp of around 5 pound. There's one, see his tail? Look at that giant carp, 3 or 4 of them. One over here a bit more. Spawning in the shallow water. Try all you like, carpios, you just can't get into the wetlands. We've got a 1.5 kilometre hike all the way out, and that's where the water crosses the track, unless it's gone down a bit, out here to the Lunette. And Holly and I are going to go carp fishing off the Lunette, and Loretta, who's with us, is going to take her bird camera and try and get some bird photos. So we're going to walk 1.5 kilometres all the way out there, fish for a few hours in this beautiful autumn sunshine, then pack up and walk back, probably in the dark. He's going to disappear down a hole in the ground, I reckon. There he goes, look. See you later, mate. This bit here will decide whether the Lunette is an island or is it a peninsula. Is the water still connected? It's coming across, it's very wet. I think it's not connected. I don't think it's an island anymore. I think we're back to being a peninsula. You could have just gone over this there and not got mud all over your shoes. 1 eastern brown snake, 1 red-bellied black snake, and a whole heap of other birds later. And Holly and I have made it out to the end of the Lunette, overlooking the main body of water at the Winton Wetlands. It's right there. Hopefully it sees that corn and that doesn't spook it. I've lost sight of the fish. It's got it, I think. It's swimming tight. Got him. Oh, hey! Did you see that? Look at the little rod go. Getting a bite. That's a bite for sure. And got him! I'm on, bro! Hey! Why do I feel like my line's tangled? Because it is! It's tangled around the reel. Right, fixed. Look at this tiny, weeny little yabby. He's tiny. Here we go, I'm walking up this track that's got a little bit of floodwater flowing over it, and look what I found. A yabby there, another one over there, little bait-sized yabbies. I've got a funny feeling I'm going to regret this. They say that water brings life. Ain't that the truth? I never knew Winton Swamp. Winton Swamp was the original wetland over here before Lake Mokoan was built. Lake Mokoan was built just a couple of years before I was born, and all I remember as a kid is Lake Mokoan, and I loved Lake Mokoan. I absolutely loved the place. I spent a lot of time over here. I've got some fond memories of me fishing over here with my grandfather, with my own parents and my brother as a family, then bringing my eldest daughter over here when she was first born. I just loved Lake Mokoan, and when the news came through that it was going to be decommissioned, I was crushed like everybody else. But eventually I gave in. I thought, I can't change this, and I came over here and visited the Winton Wetlands, and I liked it. And the more I came over here, the more I liked it. So I accepted the bad news of Lake Mokoan being drained, and then I learnt to love the Winton Wetlands. And now the Winton Wetlands is being defunded by the government, and I don't know what's next. But I've got to accept that news as well. Just like when Lake Mokoan was drained, I've certainly still got fears because I don't know what's going to happen over here. What I do know is that as long as this remains open to the public and it's not locked up, I'll always come over here and I'll always love the place. It's just a special place, and it's a place that I really love. I haven't intended in this video to sway anyone's opinions. I'm not trying to push any kind of agendas or anything. I'm just telling a story, telling you what's going on over here with the defunding of the Winton Wetlands, sharing my adventures, sharing my memories. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you found it entertaining and a little bit informative. Thank you all very much for watching.